From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Thank you for watching Texas This Week. All across the country and right here in Texas, people are losing their jobs for sharing their opinion. So what about the First Amendment? We talk with an employment attorney. Plus, longtime Congressman Michael McCaul is ready for a new challenge, announcing he will not seek re-election in the midterms. He joined me to talk about his decision. But first, let's get to the 3 things you need to know in Texas politics. This week, Governor Greg Abbott signed and vetoed bills from the second special session. He signed more than a dozen bills and vetoed one from State Senator Judith Zaffirini, who represents parts of Central Texas. Her bill would have sped up repairs on small dams used for flood control. The governor says it didn't fit in with the emergency measures he wanted lawmakers to focus on, but it's worth noting he put natural disaster preparation and recovery on the call, telling lawmakers to pass bills to speed up recovery efforts after disasters. Things are looking up for U.S. Senator John Cornyn. For the first time, a poll of Texas voters put Cornyn ahead of Republican primary challenger Attorney General Ken Paxton. Pollsters with Texas Public Opinion Research put a hypothetical head-to-head matchup in front of Texans. 32% said they would vote for the sitting senator, compared to 26% who are supporting Paxton. Mark Welsh is out as president of Texas A&M University. He submitted his resignation effective 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. It comes following a week of turmoil after a video of a student confronting a professor got the attention of state leaders, and some of those state leaders essentially called for Welsh to step down. Reports continue to come in about people across the country and right here in Texas losing their jobs or being expelled from universities for comments they make both verbally and online. And not just about the death of Charlie Kirk. Take the case of a Texas State professor who was speaking at a virtual socialism conference. He was fired, school leaders say, for inciting violence. It's raising questions about the First Amendment and do we really have a constitutional right to say what we want? For answers, I sat down with employment attorney Austin Kaplan. I think a lot of people have been questioning the First Amendment when it comes to employment, right? I mean, we have seen here recently professors being fired, people losing their jobs, students being kicked out of school. Talk to us about that intersection. Is there a fine line between your job and your freedom of speech?
Yeah, there is a fine line between what you are allowed to say as a free person in this country and what can get you fired. So I think for viewers, the important thing to know is that if you don't work for the government, so you work for a private employer and you don't have a contract for your employment, that means almost certainly you're at will and you can be fired anytime for any reason, good reason, bad reason, or no reason at all, as long as it's not an illegal reason. And the illegal reasons are found in Title VII and in Texas in the Labor Code, things like discrimination, sexual harassment, FMLA leave. But speech, political speech, is not protected in Texas for private employees. It's just not. So, you know, if your employer wants to fire you for something you say on Facebook, they absolutely are allowed to do it as long as it's not discrimination on some other protected basis.
Now, you said as long as you don't work for the government, right? And you talked about private employment, but you have, one would say, spokespeople for the government, right? For instance, the governor of Texas, the lieutenant governor, even going as far as the vice president of the United States saying if someone says something, don't only call them out, call their employer. Is that, I mean, we're starting to see government intercede a little bit into that, right?
It's wild, it's relatively unprecedented, and I personally, of course, think it's inappropriate for elected officials, executive officials to get involved in people's personal employment situation. But yeah, the governor of Texas has called for firings. It works a little bit differently if you are employed by the state. So if you're an employee of UT or of the state of Texas or even the city of Austin or a local municipality or a school district, those are all governmental employers. And in that situation, you do have free speech, First Amendment protection, but it's limited. And I'm happy to kind of get into a little bit of it.
Talk to us a little bit about the limits there.
Yeah, so it's not an unlimited right to free speech. Where you have the protection to speak is if you're speaking on a matter of public concern, which the issues we've been hearing about for the past couple of weeks certainly are matters of public concern, political assassinations, et cetera. And it has to be outside of your job duties. So you can't be talking about, if you're a teacher, what's going on in your classroom necessarily, or if you're a comms person for a governmental agency, like that's your job. That's not protected. Then if you get past those two things, your speech to be protected has to pass what we call the Pickering balancing test. The Supreme Court has been all over this over the years, and they've set forth a balancing test. Basically, if your speech is too disruptive into the workplace, then it's not protected. And if it's not, and it's more like just free speech that you're having out there on your own, then it is protected. I think the advice across the board has been just know what you're doing. Be careful in this moment about what you say, because obviously it's a dangerous time to be engaging in free speech. Sad to say it, but it is true.
Really big news. You're not going to run for re-election. Talk to us about this decision.
Well, I'm going to serve the remainder of my term, but I have served in the Congress for over 2 decades. I've chaired 2 national security committees, one the Homeland Security Committee during the rise of ISIS and the Caliphate, a very dangerous time, and then the Foreign Affairs Committee when Afghanistan fell and Putin invaded Ukraine. The Middle East is on fire, and Indo-Pacific is being threatened by China. But I really feel like, I've gotten to that point in my career. I think one mistake I've seen members make up here is after they're chairman, they just tend to stay on too long, and they're just not very happy. I'm still young enough to have another career. I will continue my work in the national security, foreign policy realm. I'll continue to have a voice. It'll just be in a different way. Quite frankly, it'd be nice to be with my wife a little bit more too. This job is very hazardous to families.
I want you to talk to us about where you see the Republican Party going, the future of the party.
Well, I'll tell you how it's changed in 20 years. The rhetoric has increased dramatically. The other side of the aisle are not viewed as colleagues, but rather as the enemy. I don't think that's healthy. I think if we want to represent the nation, we want to be able to get things done. And you don't demonize the other side. You may disagree with them, and you have an honest civil debate over different ideas. But that tone and that rhetoric has changed. There are fewer statesmen up here. I really hope that changes. And I think I've gone from the party of Reagan and Bush to now MAGA, the MAGA party. And so, I get the frustration on my side of the aisle. They want us to accomplish things, but you're not going to get things done without, it being bipartisan. That's been my experience.
Right. It always seems as though you were someone who wanted to see both sides work together to get things done, and that you feel like that's the best way to move politics forward.
It's more productive than screaming into the camera on television or in a YouTube, inflaming people back home and just feeding the beast, right? I'm not the one that's going to throw red meat at the beast just to inflame it and feed it. I think things need to cool down, especially with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I think it's once again evidence that, I remember when Gabby Giffords was shot in the head, and members are worried about their security right now because the political rhetoric is getting so hot. I hope that changes. It's one thing George Washington warned about in his farewell address was that he saw the two-party system coming into being, and he saw it going down a path of not so much doing what's right for the country, but doing what's right for the party. And I think, especially on the Foreign Affairs Committee, we need to do what's right for the country and America, because the rest of the world's listening, to what we say, on that committee. And Washington term limited himself. I've had constituents say, do you agree with term limits? And I always say, look, you can term limit me, or I can term limit myself. After 2 decades plus, I decided to term limit myself because I don't think the Founding Fathers envisioned us to stay in this job forever.
Of course, the big question now is who will run for McCaul's seat. State Senator Lois Colcourt shut down rumors that she's interested, writing on X, quote, "I will not be seeking his seat or any other congressional seat as I am focused on my reelection to Texas Senate District 18. She goes on to add her county is no longer in McCaul's district now that the Texas legislature redrew the congressional district map. Leaders with the Travis County Republican Party tell KVUE they think Austin will continue to be the heart of the district. That's Texas This Week.